Hello you wonderful RaceShare owners, and welcome back to another RaceShare Monthly. My name is Ross Briley and we're back at the end of September as summer starts to dwindle and autumn starts to arrive. The skies are grey, the ground is a little bit softer, which is a bonus for some of our horses and not necessarily for some of the others. But we'll get to that very shortly indeed. We will of course have the updates from our 5 RaceShare, I'm going to say family members. They're horses and we own them, but they're part of our family by now for sure, as it's been quite the up and down year, and that's what happens with families. Things happen, but you still love them through thick and thin. So we'll be hearing about Red Mirage, we'll be hearing about La Pulga, Scampi, Treasure Time and Jolly Nellery a little bit later on. We'll also be talking to the one and only Mr. Ollie Bell about his trip to Gay Paris this weekend and what kind of horse he would like to buy if he was going to the sales with a big wad of cash and a national hunt horse on his mind. First, some quick fire questions from you, the owners, via our Facebook group. Christine Elizabeth Stockwell, Anthony Hogan, Andy Marin and a couple of others as well, all wanted to know whether there are any plans on the horizon for RaceShare to invest in any more horses, and specifically national hunt horses for a few of you. Now the overall aim for RaceShare has been to tiptoe in with the first year and then gradually build our string and expand over the course of the next few years. So there are plans in place to study the sales brochures in the autumn time and hopefully pick up a couple of horses specifically with the national hunt season in mind. But as ever, we went to the sales last year with a set budget and a set type of horse, one that could progress gradually over the next couple of years, and it wasn't a flash in the pan, wasn't badly handicapped, wasn't overrated, and was nicely bred and can go to the right trainers. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing again. So there's absolutely no guarantees that there will be extra horses added to the RaceShare string. However, it is very much the plan to go to the sales and see if we can find a couple that will do us proud in those RaceShare silks. So watch this space. I'll keep you updated on that as the weeks go, and hopefully we'll have some very positive news and some new members of the family over the course of the next few weeks and months. Now, Andrew Willis and Mark Cath Lawson both asked similar-ish questions. Andrew said, best gambles lander by you and Ollie, horses you've been involved with previously. And Mark Cath Lawson said, have you owned race horses? And if yes, what were your best and worst moments? If no, why not? Now, we have covered these in the conversation with Ollie in past RaceShare monthly shows. Ollie obviously has been involved with the Rainbow Hunter and a couple of other horses over the years in the national hunt sphere. Personally, I've been involved with, I think, 3, maybe 4 horses on the flat. The most successful of those was a horse called Dark Forest that me and a friend owned a few seasons ago, who was originally trained by Richard Hannon as a 2-year-old, was a pretty good horse, went elsewhere and dropped in the handicap. And we bought him specifically as an all-weather horse to try and target Southwell. Now this brings in the gambles question as well, because we thought he had a Southwell pedigree. He had Southwell fibre sand winners, of course, before they ripped up the surface in his pedigree, and we thought this horse is going to absolutely relish that surface. So we sent him to Newcastle to get him fit and see if he could remember how to put one foot in front of the other. And Barry McHugh wrote him that day and said, okay, this horse has got a bit of an engine, but not necessarily for Newcastle. So we aimed him at a handicap at Southwell on a day where one of Richard Rowe's was very, very well backed, went off a short price favourite. Dark Forest opened up 20-1 in the morning, and myself and a couple of friends went round to various betting shops and helped ourselves to a bit of that 20-1 all the way down to 10-1. As they turned into the home straight, it was between the Richard Rowe favourite and Dark Forest. We were miles clear of the third, and Barry McHugh delivered him with a perfect run down the wide outside to score. And we landed some tasty bets, enough to just about pay the trading fees for the year, which tells you how expensive it is to own racehorses when you're not involved in a microshare syndicate. But there was about 20 people there at Southwell on that afternoon. Me and my friend were going absolutely crazy. And I think, yeah, there it is. In fact, we get that. There we go. That is that there is the little winner's bowl for winning Dark Forest at Southwell a few years ago. It doesn't actually have the date on it, but I don't know how valuable these things are these days, but I'm not sure. Not many people have a little bowl with a plant in it that says Southwell Racecourse winner. So that was good. He went on to win another couple of races at Southwell. One of them, if you go back and watch the replay, he was sent off favourite for it, and he was being scrubbed along into the home straight, and he shot home from God knows where to score. He ran quite well on the turf as well, but we got a bit greedy. We got a bit carried away, I think. We thought, we bought him to go on the all-weather, but maybe he could take to the grass. And he did, to be fair. He went very close at Hamilton, and he ran a really good race at Doncaster. But one day he ran on the grass, got himself a bit jarred up, and he was never quite the same after that. So we should have stuck to that fibre sand surface, that cushioned surface. And we might have had a bit more fun with him. But he won 3 races for us. We landed that big touch, of course, and we had quite a bit of fun with Dark Forest. For Marjorie Fife, who no longer trains anymore as well. They've departed the ranks, as are many small trainers, because it is a tough, expensive business to be an owner, to be a trainer. You're lucky to be involved in RaceShare, because it might only cost you 40 quid, and if it doesn't work out, then that's the job done, isn't it? But yeah, Dark Forest was retired to a field in Wakefield, and as far as I'm aware, I mean, to be fair, I should probably check in on him. I haven't heard from him in the past year or two, but I'm sure he was having a lovely time galloping around, eating hay, and have a nice retirement in West Yorkshire. So yeah, Dark Forest was the big peak for me. But I'll be honest with you though, the joy of RaceShare is that you get just as much access, if not more information than I ever did from any of the horses I owned, and I was paying the training fees every month. Of course, since then I've got a relationship and a lot more other things to spend money on, such as a new roof. Rather than a new racehorse. So it's probably the best way around, isn't it, to get involved in RaceShare and save the big money to those with bottomless pockets. But yeah, Dark Forest, what a horse, what a horse. And finally, Ian Campbell says, would be useful to have some insight to the handicap system and how that relates to classes and groups. When looking at the Racing Post, I can see 3 different ratings on a race card, RPR, OR and TS. Some explanation behind these. And then if a horse wins a race and they increment the rating, is it 1 point equals £1? What criteria is used to increase a rating by, say, 6 points when Scampy won rather than, say, 1 or 2? It's a good question, Ian. Again, if you go back, I'll double check, I'll add this in as an edit, exactly which RaceShare monthly I covered a bit more of a dive into the handicapping system. There is an extensive video in a past RaceShare monthly, but just to cover a couple of things you mentioned there. Now, RPR, OR and TS. RPR is Racing Post rating, OR is official rating, and TS is top speed. Now, the official rating, the OR, is what the BHA assign a horse, so that is their official handicap mark. That is the mark that they will run off in a handicap. If that's 75, it means they can run in a 0 to 75, for example, and they will carry the amount of weight allotted depending on the ratings band of the race, of course. Again, I go into this in full, but OR is official rating, and those official ratings are changed on a weekly basis depending on how a horse performs on the track. Whether your horse goes up £6, £1, £2 is basically your horse is handicapped on the other horses in the race and how they perform. Obviously, if you go and win a race by 10 lengths, beating a lot of progressive horses who the handicapper deems to have run up to their rating, you're going to get walloped and go up in the ratings. If you go on and beat a lot of regressive horses or win a Seller or a Claimer or a Maiden where you were quite clearly the best horse on official ratings, the handicapper will be fairly kind to you and might not even change your rating at all. But that is all at the handicapper's discretion, and those decisions are made depending on obviously there's weights for distance based on each race. So horses winning by wide margins over 5 furlongs will be very different to horses rating to winning over 2 miles, for example. But again, we go into that in more detail in a previous video. As for RPR, that's Racing Post rating. So that's basically a personal handicap mark or performance number allotted to the horses by the Racing Post handicapper. So they have their own in-house team. Those marks don't affect what the horse runs off officially, but it does basically give you a number, and the Racing Post say this is the number we would give it for their performance based on our scale, and TS is top speed, so that takes into account speed figures, which is a whole different ball game. Now, official ratings and Racing Post ratings will take in official times, so if the time was very good on the day, that will affect how they rate your horse. But top speed in particular just focuses entirely on the time and how that relates to the rest of the times on the race. So official rating and RPR take in times, top speed focuses only on times. Yeah, like I said, I hope that gives you a bit of insight. In fact, it might not be the worst idea for the next monthly show. If you think this is a good idea, then I will cover all the acronyms and the things that you can see on a race card, because there's a lot of information there. A lot of it is jargon that you won't necessarily understand. And who do you ask? You can't just turn to someone at the races. Well, you could turn to someone at the races, but you could be there for quite a long time. And racing is a bit of a closed shop. You're kind of like, what, you don't know that, and that's not the attitude we want. That's not what we want here at RaceShare. So I hope that helps, Ian Campbell, and I'll go into it in more detail in future if you would like. But go back and watch that previous RaceShare Monthly for a deep dive into the handicapping system. Now it's time for an update on the RaceShare horses then. 5 family members, and what have they been up to in the past 4 weeks since we last spoke. Let's start off with Red Mirage then, who we were lucky to see in the flesh at the Quinn's stable visit a week or so ago. It was a beautiful morning up in Malton, and John Quinn was, just stupendously generous and open with his time, and we saw Red in the flesh. And he looked magnificent. He was gleaming almost. He'd only raced a couple of days before, of course, at Chester, but he was well muscled. His coat, he still had his summer coat as well, and he looked absolutely fantastic. And he took it all in his stride, as you can see at the Quinns. There were a huge number of owners there to see him. Pretty much everyone got a nice photo and gave him a good stroke on the nose at the very least, and a pat on the back to give him a bit of encouragement. If anything, he was almost too laid back. Maybe that's why he's not necessarily winning this year. He's so relaxed. He took it all in his stride. Like I said, everyone was crowding around him, and he was like a Hollywood actor at the Oscars. He was just taking it all in. I think it'll be very interesting over the next couple of weeks or so. Now, he hasn't been declared at Beverley, of course. Chester next week is a potential option for him. And given that all his wins have come on flat tracks round a bend, Chelmsford, Kempton, and Chester, I think it probably is a better decision to go there than Beverley, as Beverley is quite a stiff track with a stiff finish, albeit it does suit prominent racers. It'll be interesting to see what the tactics will be as well, because all his wins have come when either forcing the pace or racing prominently. And we've seen this year that, like I said, he can be a little bit maybe lazy in his races when asked to really go and win his race, a little bit too laid back. But John Quinn did say at the stable visit that they plan to give him probably 2 more runs this autumn, and then give him a break, not too long a break, and then bring him back for sort of February, March, back end of the all-weather season and the spring turf season, because the likes of those early season soft ground meetings on the turf, and there's quite a lot of weak, valuable all-weather racing at the back end when the turf trainers start to look towards the grass, and you can take advantage of those. So your Kemptons, your Chelmsfords will all suit Red Mirage, maybe even a Southwell as well, rattling around that bend and kicking on up the home straight. So that's the plan. But John was adamant they would get to the bottom of him. He didn't rule anything out. I still think I'd love to see him drop to a sprint distance and kick on. He's by a sprinter, out of a sprinter, and he does race quite keenly in his races. But John Quinn will get the best of him. And he was also saying that a lot of the Quinn horses as well have had seasons in the past where they haven't necessarily fired. Mr. Wagyu was a great example. He was rated 83 as a 3-year-old for the Quinn yard. His 4-year-old season, he had a nightmare. He didn't get anywhere near to winning a race, and he dropped from 83 to 64. So he dropped 19 pounds in a season. He won 2 races as a 5-year-old to go up to a mark of 72, and it was his 6-year-old season where he went from 72 to 100. He won 5 sprint handicaps in that season, and that was his year. 6-year-olds, as a 7-year-old, he won 2 more, rated 104. So, these horses can have off seasons. Maybe Red Mirage just needs a bit of a break, a bit of a freshen up, a bit of a winter off, and come back with a bit of renewed vigour. But John was adamant we would get to the bottom of him, and we'll have a lot of fun with him regardless of the trip and the track. I know that for sure. As for La Pulga, well, we need to give the handicapper a ring, I think. He hasn't had much luck this year. He's been racing in races that are, in hindsight, absolutely red hot. Goodwood, of course, Sweet William is a group horse. Post Impressionist, who won over at Haydock, looks a group horse as well for William Haggas. And a lot of horses, as we discussed at the time, didn't fire in that race. Aztec Empire, Forza Orta, Sea King. There were horses strung out like washing right out the back. And La Pulga was one of those. The frustrating thing is that the handicap has only dropped him £5 in his last 4 runs, despite the fact we've only beaten 7 horses in those races combined. Let's take Red Mirage as an example. He's been dropped that amount of weight by the handicapper in only 2 runs, and he's run pretty well actually in those 2 runs. So I think maybe the handicapper's looking at La Pulga and thinking that he's not badly handicapped, he's just outclassed, and that's why he's been a bit harsh on him from a handicapping perspective. But come on, give us a chance. Drop us down to a workable mark here and we can start to get rolling again. The other thing worth mentioning, I think, is that the Charlie Johnston horses haven't had a fantastic summer. We went to the Johnston Yard, of course, a couple of weeks ago as well, as you are seeing right now. And we had a wonderful time. We had a big chat with Charlie. If you haven't watched that already, you can do so on the RaceShare YouTube channel. But July and August were well below par for the yard. They were operating around a 9-10% strike rate. That is well below what the Johnstons normally do. And they've really hit form to be running at 23-24% over the past few weeks. They had a very good May and June. They had a terrible July and August, and they're back in the swing of things in September. And when did La Pulga run most of his races, and in particular his bad races? July and August. So I think the Johnston horses have dipped. They've hit a bit of a plateau, and they'll be bouncing back. So hopefully we'll see La Pulga bounce back. But come on, handicapper, give us some help. As for Treasure Time, well, God, it feels a long time since we saw him at Newbury, didn't it? And he was racing very coltishly. He was green. He was clearly talented, but immature for sure. But not long now, in theory. He is declared for Pontefract. In fact, he might have already run by the time this goes out, which is part of the problem with recording it in advance. But he's going to go to Pontefract. It's a weaker race than the Haydock race he was also entered in for. Dylan Hogan rides him. And his debut form continues to work out. Ponty over 6 should be perfect for Treasure Time. His pedigree suggests that a stiff 6 should be ideal. And that Newbury form, it's looking good, isn't it? Iberian, who won the race, has gone on to win the Champagne Stakes, so we were up against a genuine Group 2 quality animal. We had no chance in hindsight. And behind there was Double Jump and Mafnood, of course, who finished first and second at the St Leger meeting as well, in a really warm nursery handicap. Inish Fallen, who was in that as well for Brian Meehan, has gone on to finish second in the Solario Stakes. So we were up against 2, maybe 3 group horses on debut, and Trevor couldn't keep his mind on the job. Hence, he's had a gelding operation, which is perfectly standard for horses. But he is a young horse, and it's taken him a little bit of time to just get back into the swing of things after that. But fingers crossed, we can end the season on a high, whether we go on to win before the end of the season or even just get another couple of runs under our belt so we get a handicap mark. And as I said, his pedigree suggests he will improve with time. The dam got better with age, and William Haggas is a master. He's not a 2-year-old trainer. Even though the likes of Lake Forest have given him big wins this year, his horses get better with 3 and even 4 years on the track. So keep an eye on Treasure Time at Ponty. Fingers crossed by the time you watch this, he might have either won or gone very close indeed. But he's back on track. Scampy, what a year we've had for Scampy. It's started to tail off a little bit, hasn't it, recently? We had dreams of winning the Ebor and going to Australia, but the problem with dreams is sometimes you have to wake up from them. But the Ebors continue to work out really well. It looks rock solid form. And of course, the last time we saw him was in that Southwell race in the Racing League contest. And it was a farce. I've watched it back 3 times. They go absolutely no gallop whatsoever. It turns into a sprint, a furlong from home. Every single horse is in a line. That ain't what Scampy needs. He needs a strong gallop. He's got a high cruising speed. He comes into it and he kicks on and he just gets into that rhythm. He doesn't have a turn of foot, a sprint finish. He has a really high, continuous, consistent cruising speed, and he didn't get to use it. If you watch the race again, you'll see he goes past 4, maybe even 5 horses in that final furlong, and he was only just getting going, and then bang, the race was over. The winner, Valsad, was battered out of sight the other day, which suggests that form isn't necessarily one to take seriously. Now, there's a potential we go back to York, where, of course, he's had success this season already, and there is a meeting in a week or 2, and there's a 1 mile, 2.5 furlong handicap, a 0 to 95, that might well be perfect for Scampi. They're probably going to go a bit of a stronger gallop, and it won't be as competitive as the John Smith's Cup, of course, which is run over the same course and distance. So, yeah, we will get one possibly big win, or at least a big run in Scampi at a track he loves if everything goes to plan. And again, Andrew Balding is a master at improving horses over time. Coltrane this year, of course, and we've got a lot of fun next year with Scampi to look forward to. Finally, Jolly Nellery. Now, I know if you've got shares in Jolly Nellery, you haven't had much to talk about over the summer. Venetia Williams is having a lovely, relaxed old time. She hasn't had a runner for months. She hasn't got any entered in September, but it's not her time of year. She likes soft ground. She sometimes has one or two runners in October, but it's November when the Venetia Williams horses start to kick on. Now, we do have a stable visit on Saturday, of course, at Venetia's. I was supposed to be there. Unfortunately, I can't make it. I've got to go to a wedding, not mine. But I hope you all have a wonderful time. It's an incredible yard. And we'll see if Jolly has grown up, has muscled up. He was a character. He was dancing about the place. He was showing off when we saw him in the spring. And we'll be... I'm a bit gutted, if I'm honest, to not see his improvement over the course of a summer off for him. But yeah, Venetia's going to kick into gear very soon, I'm sure. But for now, we will be awaiting news of Jolly Nellery. And you'll get to see him this weekend, of course, at Venetia's. And finally, you've had plenty of questions about renewing your shares for the horses. Now, the last week of October is when we're going to be releasing that window to renew your shares, and you'll get 2 weeks to buy back into the horses you already have shares in, and that, of course, will be potentially, if you want, taken out of any prize money. So if you've won some prize money, say from Scampi, you can use that prize money to then just renew your shares, or you can withdraw the prize money and just pay for it ad hoc if you like. But it'll be the back end of October. We'll release it and let you know about those exact dates and when you can renew your shares in your RaceShare horses, or buy some more as well if you like. So keep an eye out for that, but it'll be another 3 or 4 weeks until you have to worry about that. We will keep you well informed. Now it's time for Mr. Ollie Bell. What's he been up to? Let's find out.
Getting into that autumn period whereby it's strange, isn't it? Because in theory, you think, oh, the summer's over, the racing starts to quieten down a little bit, but it doesn't. What it does is it just packs into weekends, and you get your Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and there's just loads going on.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get less busy; it just gets very concentrated, I feel. And like you said, yeah, you've got kind of Newmarket nearly every week. You've got Ascot. We've just had 3 days at Ayr, of course. We've got Longchamp coming up. There's loads going on. And I don't know why you bother renting a flat, Ollie. I do often think you should just get a VW camper van.
Yeah. You know what? You joke, but I'm barely ever home. So, yeah.
So where are you? So you're off to, you've got Newmarket, you're off to Longchamp.
2 days of Newmarket first. So it's very boring, but go up to Newmarket Thursday night. There Friday, Saturday for ITV. Back on the opening show on Saturday, which is good. Looking forward to that. And then fly to France on Saturday night. I'm there on Sunday for the Arc, which is all I've done a few years. I did Enable's second and her attempt at the third Arc, and I just loved being there. I mean, it's very different, and not to be. I mean, I'm going to sound like a bit of a snob here, but when you're the sort of host broadcaster, you'll very much get the access you want. You very much, to a certain extent, have things sort of put on a plate for you, i.e. you get the first interviews, people come out to ITV. When you're in France broadcasting, it's just me and a lad called Robert Hogarth and a cameraman who's normally a local cameraman. And Robert's sort of the floor manager, I guess. But you're very much sort of thrown into the paddock and said, just get what you can when you can. And it's a bit more chaotic in France. Thankfully, the local trainers that we see regularly are always very accommodating, but some of the French trainers and jockeys don't have any idea who I am and what ITV racing is. So I really enjoy that, though. There's almost a sort of bringing it back to basics element of reporting, which actually I really enjoy. And hopefully that, there was one year actually where my producer, Richie, who I love dearly, I was an usher at his wedding long before ITV. We were at Racing UK together. He was producing the first ARC coverage, and Dan Carter was playing for a French rugby side at the time. And I got an interview with Dan which for me as a rugby fan was like an iconic moment. You know, he's the best rugby player of the world. Anyway, I sent it down the line and it didn't go to air. And I went, why didn't the Dan Carter interview go out? I mean, he's sort of the world's best rugby player. The World Cup's coming up. And he went, I had no idea who he was, mate. And I was like, well, you know, we're running around trying to get these things. And anyway, I don't know who will get this time round, but you might see a few of the rugby lads there, actually, because obviously the World Cup's on at the moment. But it's going to be a great race. I mean, there's so much international interest in the Arc.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at because the thing is, I went to the Arc every year for about, I mean, it was almost 10 years, I think, every single year. I think the first one I saw was Hurricane Run. And, you know, we were there for Deep Impact, that very, very strange year where literally half of Japan turned up in Paris. And yeah, we had some, you know, stunning years. And what I haven't been since they've done the renovations to Longchamp, but what I loved about it was like €4 to get in. Or something. You basically turn up and they'd be like, yeah, and they give you a little ticket stub like you were going to the fair, and you go, oh, great, fantastic. You go in, I'd get a chicken sandwich, a bag of crisps, and a can of Kronenberg or whatever, and then go and watch basically the best racing all year. You'd be around the paddock. There was always one guy the French guy was clearly there every meeting, shouting to the trainers and the jockeys, stuff that I didn't understand, but they were clearly answering him as if like, you know, are you making the run in? Whatever it was, he was shouting. And it felt a bit like sort of all the bets were off, all the rules had gone out of the window. It was like you've got the world's best jockeys, the world's best horses, the world's best trainers, and the red carpet had been thrown out the back. The basically the access was insane, and they just seemed to be like, yeah, well, you know, it's just race it, isn't it? You know, come in, have a chat, and that's what I loved about it. It was a real juxtaposition between seeing the best race of the entire season, but feeling very unracing in that everyone was kind of welcome and we were all there for the same reason, which was lovely. I don't know what it's like now. I don't know if that's changed at all.
The first year after the redevelopment, there was a few grumblings, but ultimately after that, and what you do find is there are so many British racing fans that make the sort of journey over. So it kind of feels like a home fixture when you're in and amongst the crowd. There's so many people who just love horse racing from these shores that head over. It's very obviously relatively easy to get to, and yeah, you know, it's really nice to see that level of interest in the race from these shores, and obviously that's why ITV show it. And when you look at the field, 2 of the top 3 in the betting are, and potentially 3 of the top 4, because Continuous needs supplementing, but they're local horses. Hookham, Westover, Continuous if he's supplemented, Bay Bridge is in there. You've got Japanese interest, local interest.
You've got the usual. You've got your improving fillies as well. You've got your, like you said, your 3-year-olds coming from classic runs. You've got your mix of, you've got your stayers, you've got your 10 furlong horses giving a crack at a mile and a half. Your stayers stepping back down in trip. I mean, it's another one of those ones that, you look at them and you think, God, even if 4 or 5 of these turn up. And the best thing about the Arc is that those 4 or 5 always do turn up. It's not like the summer races where they go, well, we're going to give it actually, we're not going to this. We're going to come to Ascot or something in a couple of weeks. Longchamp is Longchamp, and there's not even getting beaten 20 lengths into 10th, you're still like, well, we had a crack at the Arc, so that's we had to take it.
Yeah, exactly. A very good judge told me that Through 7 Seas is a very interesting runner at a decent price, about 16-1, one of the Japanese raiders who I can't profess to knowing too much about, but is apparently worth having a look at each way in the race.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard one to get involved in. The most I would love it if Bay Bridge won, because I do think, like I said, he's been a horse I've followed his novice win basically, and it was a bit weird the other day when he won at Kempton, because I went, oh yeah, Bay Bridge 1.5 miles, and then I thought, hang on a minute, he hasn't run over 1.5 miles before, has he? And he's the most obvious 1.5 mile horse to never have run over 1.5 miles, and I think he's fascinating because of that, because there's clearly tons of ability, and you don't quite know how much more that's going to unlock. It could be that all these years he's been a Group 1 horse over 10 furlongs, desperate.
Yeah.
Extra couple of furlongs.
Absolutely. It's really interesting that I think he's a fascinating runner. And Am I right in thinking that that race was a springboard for Enable as well, the Kempton race into an Arc in the past? If memory serves, I think she won on the all-weather 1 year into the Arc. It was a bit of a unusual prep, but in any case, Baybridge is a player. I've been really impressed by Hookham. That race at Ascot with him and Westover was exceptional. Yeah, as I say, I think it's going to be a terrific contest. I personally would love Japan to win the race because I think the rise. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this and be a bit more loyal to sort of the local racing scene, but the Japanese dominance globally at the moment is exceptional, and they have such an interest in the art. And I feel that if they were to win it, then we might see horses, maybe not Equinox, but we might see some very good horses being campaigned in Europe a bit more to then go to the Arc, and we'll see some runners at Ascot, Goodwood, etc., because they have got some exceptional thoroughbreds and their industry is thriving, and they clearly have made it you remember the famous Orfevre YouTube sensation, Deep Impact, you mentioned that. I mean, Deep Impact went off sort of 101 on the PMU. That
was the best result I've ever had in an Arc. It wasn't like a form study, strong opinion. We just looked at the toe and thought, well, we're just going to have to back pretty much everything else. Yeah. And I think I backed Rail Link at, I think it was 25 to 1.
Yeah. It was madness.
Yeah, and I remember I didn't even know what it returned, but it would, and I was like, oh, well, we must have. And then I rang up and because that was the days of telephone betting as well. I rang up, yeah. Can I? Sorry, I know it's a bit loud, but there's 10,000 Japanese people here.
I was an editorial assistant or assistant producer at Racing UK at the time. I think there was a question in about best gambles or best bets we've had. Well, it won't be my one. I can't remember which owner asked the question, but did someone ask about our best gambles, which I think we've spoken about ourselves in the past. But
yeah, it was Andrew Willis, best gambles landed by you and Ollie.
Yeah, we've spoken about that ourselves. But I remember with Rail Link's Art, my old boss, who I won't name, but he was at Racing. He was an absolute legend. He gave me my sort of big break, I guess, or my first job in TV. And he was, as you say, on the phone every 2 minutes going, I'll have X amount on this. And I was listening going, why is he backing every horse? Like, this is, except Deep Impact. And then anyway, the tote prices came through and he was ringing up the tote, and he must have made fortunes on Rail Link winning that Art.
Yeah, I think I paid for the trip basically almost by accident of that, having I was like, oh, Rail Link's got a bit of a chance, and then I think there was 9 runners, I think, and I backed 4 of them just because I was looking at the tote thinking this is absolutely insane. Yeah. So I hope you have a wonderful time, because I am a bit jealous. I need to go back really and reevaluate that. It won't quite. The problem is it will never live up to the first time I went, where me and 3 friends got in a midnight blue 10-year-old Fiat Punto and drove from Sheffield to Paris.
Amazing.
And went to the Arc. And again, because that's the thing, it's like we looked at it and we're like, oh, we need to get tickets. And so I was like, just turn up and it's €5. I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? We were like, well, and we were kind of like, what are you doing this weekend? Well, if we set off on Friday night, we'll get there by Sunday. We had a great time. But so it's not going to be like that. I'll want a comfortable bed and that kind of stuff. That's the problem. A couple of other things though from our owners. Like I said, I did put up a couple of questions up on the RaceShare owners Facebook page, and there was quite a theme to a lot of them, and that is basically Christine Stockwell, Anthony Hogan, Andy Maron. Quite a lot of them said, "I'd like to know if there are any new horses going to RaceShare, specifically National Hunt ones for a few of them." And this will be covered in the earlier part of the monthly show. But the aim, in theory, is to get a couple of new recruits if the right ones come along. And of course, sales season coming up in a few weeks' time. Now, we have no say whatsoever, Ollie, on whether we do or how many we buy or what we buy. However, let's pretend that we do. And if you were to buy a National Hunt horse, what's your, over the next 12 months of the jump season, I said to you, buy a horse and you could aim for this and you'd win this race. What's your dream scenario?
Within 12 months, or like for the first season?
Yeah. What would you, if you could go and you go, I think that horse is perfect for what I want to achieve this year, whether it's like I said, I want a champion hurdler, I want a Grand National candidate, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I would like. I mean, I've had, and again, I think it ties in with a question about
You've had a Grand National candidate, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had 2 horses running. Humble brag. None of my doing, but that experience was incredible. But essentially, when you have a Grand National horse, you're chasing the dream of having a 150 rated chaser. Really, between 150 and 145 and 160. For me, the absolute dream would be to have a Gold Cup horse. And actually, it's been quite interesting seeing the decision that Michael Buckley and the Constitution Hill team have had to make recently, where they've decided to stay hurdling because, as Nicky Henderson says, a champion chase is the same prestige as a champion hurdle. If we're not going to stay the Gold Cup trip, what are we doing? I can kind of see the logic there. But for me, and when you speak to anyone involved in national hunt racing, a Gold Cup horse is absolutely what you want. If you speak to Ruby, to AP, to Mick Fitzgerald, less so Luke Harvey, but mainly the Gold Cup winning jockeys that I speak to regularly at work, they say it's way above the Grand National in their opinion. So to do that, though, you do need a good novice hurdler. You might need a Challow winner as opposed to a Supreme winner, but ultimately you need a talented novice hurdler who has to go through the ranks. And I think that's what I really enjoy about national hunt racing, is that you can have a horse at 3, 4, 5, but you're going to get the peak of that horse in 4 years' time. And I know that means that you have to have a slight bit more patience and things like that. But ultimately, you get 4 or 5 years in different spheres before they reach their pinnacle. And I think the transition and that sort of the route they take and the development they make is something that's very special about the sport. Yeah. And so my dream would be a Gold Cup horse. What about you?
Well, again, I think it's hard because it's tempered by realism in my brain, in the sense of like, yeah, it would be lovely to have a Gold Cup horse, but it's rare to even get a horse. Even there's 20 horses a season. Sometimes you think they could be Gold Cup horses, and only 5 of them even get close to being good enough to compete in that race, and only 1 of them probably wins. So it is really difficult. It's not thinking, I want to win a big sprint handicap or something. You go, great, you've got 10 to aim for. But there's the one thing that I absolutely love in the national hunt game is I love the promise of a novice chaser. I love a horse sort of 6, 7 years old reaching that level where they're starting to really get the hang of things. And I'm not really bothered about the trip. I probably prefer a 2.5 to 3 mile novice chaser than an Arkle horse, mainly just because the Arkle, one mistake sometimes and bang, everything goes to pot. But there is something about a horse first time out over fences in a season, and okay, let's see what he's made of, and then pings every single one of them, pulls away to win by 6 or 7 lengths, and you think, my God, okay, we've got one here. And then you start to go through the grades, and you maybe win a couple of the novice chasers, then you step up, and then you're winning a grade 1 novice chase over the winter, and you think, right, this is it. This is what we've got to be excited about. And then you've got your Cheltenhams, you've got your Aintrees, you've got your Punchestowns, and yeah, there's something about an electrifying novice chaser that really gets my blood pumping. It's promise, but it's not juvenile hurdler promise or novice hurdler promise where it's kind of come from nowhere. You could probably make a decent list of horses that are going to fill that category this year, and then when one of them starts to emerge from the pack, you're like, okay, this is my horse in that grade for the year. I mean, yeah, so I think I don't care what division it is. I just want that novice chase season where you're like, my God. And I guess in theory, we could have both. I could have that, and then we could transform into your Gold Cup horse.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do that then?
All right, let's do that then.
Hope the powers that be are watching.
Yeah. Solved it. Yeah, easy. Yeah.
I do think the plan is, I mean, not that we know for certain, but I've got it on pretty good authority that the plan is to expand the stable, and that will, I'm sure, come out, and everyone will be told about that as and when.
Finally, speaking of stables, I've been to a couple of stable tours recently and hosted them at the Johnsons and the Quinns, and we had a wonderful time. They were both absolutely fantastic. I mean, the Johnsons is I mean, it's not even a racing stable, is it? It's a corporation. It's a village. It's a town. It's a machine. It is insane up there, and the facilities are fantastic. And Charlie was kind enough. I think we must have talked for half an hour. I think while the Bulga parade, and we got some yearlings in, and we saw how they were kind of introduced to the schooling and going through the stalls and whatnot. And we had a really great chat. And then we saw some horses gallop, and then we went to the Quins, and it was a very different experience. It was like a working yard where he's like, yeah, just wander around and say hello to all the horses, and everyone had a lovely morning. Both of them were fantastic. I was supposed to be doing Venetia's, but I've got to go to a wedding instead. But we've got Venetia, of course, the Baldings and the Haggis stable tour, which you will be hosting. And yes, there is something. They're just so much fun.
Yeah, I love them. I think the access you get to great horses is obviously phenomenal. And you would have seen from like the Newmarket Open weekend shots this weekend, when you can open your doors to racing fans. I know in this case it's owners, but racing fans, and they see what happens. You know, I don't want to speak for the owners, but I imagine there are a few owners watching this involved in Treasure Time, for example, that probably haven't been to a racing yard before. The fact that you will get to go and see the horses up close, not just Treasure Time, but also other very good horses that William trains. Speak to William, who is a great racing brain and mind and incredible trainer. His record speaks for itself. And then see horses stretch their legs on Newmarket gallops, which are iconic and beautiful. I hope, touch wood, the weather's going to be all right. It's less beautiful when the weather rains at Newmarket. I speak from many years of experience up there. But for me, and this is what I say to anyone getting involved in racing, for me, the thing that really captured my imagination and gave me the racing bug was the first time I went racing on a race course, and the first time I saw horses galloping on a gallops, because it's kind of postcard movie stuff. It gets every emotion in your body flowing, and I can't wait to go there, speak to William. I'm going to forewarn everyone, he always does like to give me a few sort of digs in the rib and take the mickey. And so he'll probably be on quite mischievous form, I think, if he sees me kicking around. But then hopefully we'll have a drink with the owners afterwards and catch up with everyone properly and make a really good day of it in Newmarket, which is the home of horse racing. And yeah, I'm so excited. I really am looking forward to seeing it and seeing Treasure Time up close, but also seeing the owners again. The last time I saw a lot of the owners was obviously at York with Scampin. I had a magic day, and I hope everyone did too. And I'm sure we're booked for the same at Newmarket.
Lovely stuff. Right then, Ollie, I'll leave you to go and recover from your exertions over the past week or two and prepare for your.
I've got to write a monthly blog. No rest for the wicked.
I know.
That's coming soon. Yeah, proper, really simple stuff coming this month. I am Ollie.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, but I am. So,
good stuff.
All right, mate. Well, best of luck with that. And I can't wait to not read. I mean, I can't wait to just soak in every single word of it.
Thank you, pal.
Thanks ever so much. That's another RaceShare Monthly. My name's Ross Briley. You've been wonderful. Hello to everyone I saw at the Quins and the Johnstons. Sorry I can't be there for the Baldings, the Venetia Williams stable tour, and I might pop down to see William Haggis, although Ollie Bell will be there himself to give you a big old hug and a shake of the hand. So enjoy that. And like I said, by the next time I speak to you, we could have seen, well, apart from Jolly Nellery, perhaps, we could have seen Scampi, La Pulga, Red Mirage and Treasure Time. Hopefully, back in the winner's enclosure, at the very least, back on the track and doing us all proud. It's been quite a year. You're all wonderful. See you next time.